Dear students, welcome to the part 2 video of In Celebration of Being Alive essay. So in the previous video, we have seen the writer of this essay, Dr. Christian Bernard. He had a view about suffering and he hated suffering like anything. And his view of suffering is different from the view of his father about suffering. And he was talking about suffering by giving the examples like many children are suffering in the world with the wounds and with the death and with many type of diseases. So he said that suffering does not make a person better and suffering is bad. So this is what he said. But in the last paragraph which we covered in the previous video, Dr. Christian Bernard was saying that he observed an incident in Red Cross Children's Hospital in Cape Town. And so that particular incident made him to change his view about suffering, and that particular incident made him to be filled with full of comfort in his heart. And that incident is nothing but, it is said by Dr. Christian Bernard in the previous paragraph, that it is what he called as the Grand Prix of Cape Town's Red Cross Children Hospital. Grand Prix, I told you already in the previous video that it is the car race. So it is the race. So you may get doubt that the Christian Bernard was talking about the car race, but how can there will be car race in the hospital? So you might have got doubt. But he explains about that race or Grand Prix in Red Cross Children's Hospital in the next paragraphs. So if we observe and understand the next paragraphs, we will come to know what is the Grand Prix which was talked by Dr. Christian Bernard. So let us try to understand in the next paragraphs about that car race. Yes, look at the next paragraph. What happened there that morning was that a nurse had left a breakfast trolley unattended. And very soon this breakfast trolley was commandeered by an intrepid crew by an intrepid crew of two, a driver and a mechanic. Intrepid crew means a very brave group of two people or two children. Those are a driver and a mechanic. The mechanic provided motor power by galloping along behind the trolley with his head down, while the driver, seated on the lower deck, held on with one hand and steered by scraping his foot on the floor. The choice of their roles was easy because the mechanic was totally blind and the driver had only one arm. So here, what is the race? What is the incident that happened when Dr. Christian Bernard was there in Red Cross Children Hospital? And why Christian Bernard talked about that incident and why he said that this incident had changed his view of suffering and why he felt comforted by this particular incident. So, what is the incident totally? What happened? So, what is the incident and what happened there in the Red Cross Children's Hospital? So, that is what is explained in this particular paragraph. So, that is nothing but the Grand Prix of Red Cross Children's Hospital is explained or revealed in this particular paragraph. In the previous paragraph, that is in the last video, in the last paragraph, we have seen that the Grand Prix of Red Cross Children's Hospital was just mentioned. But here in this paragraph, that Grand Prix or car race is explained here. So let us look at that. Here there is car. So car here is not a real car, but it is a breakfast trolley. So a nurse has forgotten a breakfast trolley, and we see that on the breakfast trolley there were plates and all the silverware. So all the silverware means knives, forks, spoons, and so on the breakfast trolley, and plates also. And we find two children here. So one is, look at the screen, the mechanic, he is the one, and then there is one more, that is the driver. So there are two children, one is the mechanic and the second one is the driver. Yes, here in this paragraph the writer explained how the mechanic was driving the breakfast trolley and what was his role and what was the role of the driver. See, what happened here is that a nurse has forgotten a breakfast trolley, and then this was taken by two children, and very brave children, and one child acted as a mechanic and one more child acted as a driver. So what the mechanic was doing and what the driver was doing with this breakfast trolley, so that is what is here. What mechanic did was that he provided motor power, and he was increasing speed for trolley to go like a car. So this mechanic was giving power by galloping. Galloping means increasing speed along behind the trolley with his head down. So he was bending his head down and increasing the speed and uh, pushing the trolley like a car, thinking that it is a car, and he was pushing from behind. So this is the role of the mechanic. And what is the role of the driver? Yes, so driver seated on the lower deck of this particular breakfast trolley, and he caught the steering with one hand, the handle with one hand, and steered by scraping his foot on the floor. So he has driven this particular breakfast trolley by scraping his foot on the floor. Scraping means scratching and touching the foot on the ground or the floor. So he was supporting the mechanic who was pushing from behind, and he was also supporting him by increasing the speed of this breakfast trolley So we need to observe that the one boy was acting like the driver and one more boy was acting like the mechanic, and the mechanic was pushing the trolley from behind and the driver was driving, and both of them were driving the trolley like a car in the corridor of the hospital in a speedy manner. So this is what we can find. And uh, so who is the driver? Driver was there, sitting on the lower deck, and he was only with the one hand and steered by scraping his foot on the floor. And we can observe that the driver here is uh, the handicapped boy. Driver was the handicapped boy. This is what is explained here in the last line. See, the choice of roles was easy because the mechanic was totally blind and the driver had only one arm. This is the revealing of the secret. And these two children made Christian Bernard to think deeply about suffering and to take the things light and to enjoy life. And he was thinking that he was challenged by these two children. So this is what he said. So here their roles of choice was easy and appropriate because the child, the who was the mechanic was blind, so he had no eyes, and one more child, the driver, had only one arm, so he is a handicapped boy, but with that arm only, so he was catching the what you call as the handle, and with that one leg only he was just increasing the speed of this trolley. So we can understand that their roles were appropriate. They have chosen the correct roles to drive this particular trolley. So this is what has happened. This is the Grand Prix of Red Cross Children's Hospital. This is the car race, or we can understand trolley race of the Red Cross Children's Hospital. So this is what is there in the 6th paragraph. Next, if we go to the 7th paragraph, let us see. I'll read out. They put on quite a show that day, judging by the laughter and the shouts of encouragement from the rest of the patients. It was much better entertainment than anything anyone puts on at the Indianapolis 500 car race. There was grand finale of scattered plates and silverware before the nurses and ward sister caught up with them, scolded them and put them back to bed. So what has happened here? They put on quite a show. Put on means they performed quite a show that day. So what is the show? So here, that is the car race was the show, and we can understand that this race was like a show for all the patients. The patients were shouting after looking at this particular car race, this particular trolley race, and it was like entertainment for the patients, as if they were watching the Indianapolis 500 car race. So this car race you can find in United States of America. So which was a car race which was liked by many of the fans. So we can understand that the patients in the hospital were watching this particular trolley race and they were shouting, and they were feeling that it is like entertainment for them. They were watching and they were being happy. So we can understand that these two children who was blind and who was handicapped, these two children were making the patients very happy. So, in spite of their what do you call physical problems, but they were making the patients to be happy and to have entertainment. So this is what we can find. And finally what happened is that because of this car race, and as they were going very speedily, so there were scattered plates and silverware thrown before the nurses. Before the nurses, we can find that these plates were scattered, and the silverware also, knives, forks, and spoons, and these plates and all these silverware was also thrown before the nurses and before the patients and so on. So what happened later is that ward sister, so there was the ward sister, there was a nurse, and finally came and caught these two children, and after reaching them, she scolded them, and again put these two boys back to their beds. So this is what was done. So we can understand that they created much show there. They created much show there, and all the patients were enjoying it. But the silverware was scattered everywhere, and then finally we can understand that a nurse has come and stopped them, and has scolded them, and then they were put back to their beds. So this is what has happened in this particular paragraph. Next, let me tell about these two. The mechanic was of all 7 years old. One night, when his mother and father were drunk, his mother threw a lantern at his father, missed, and the lantern broke over the child's head and shoulders. So here we see that this eighth paragraph, so it is about the mechanic. So the writer described the mechanic. So who was behind the trolley and pushing the trolley. So this paragraph is about him. So he was 7 years old, and when his father was drunk, so and came back to home on a particular day, his mother threw a lantern at his father. So with the angry mood, his mother, the mechanic, or I mean the blind boy's mother, has thrown the lantern on the face of the drunken father. But what happened? The lantern was missed, and the lantern broke over the child's head and shoulders. So this lantern did not touch the father, but it has touched and it has broken over the child's head, this blind boy's head, and on the shoulders also. It has attacked the shoulders also. And so because of this, what happened? He suffered severe third degree burns on the upper part of his body. Third degree burns means deep into the skin. So he had severe burns, as this is the lantern, severe burns into deep into the skin on the upper part of his body. That means on the neck and on the chest and on the face. So he had severe wounds on the upper part of his body and lost both his eyes. Unfortunately, because of this mother and father's quarrel, and this boy was attacked, unfortunately, and both of his eyes were lost. So this is what is about the mechanic. And at the time of the Grand Prix, he was a walking horror with a disfigured face and a long flap of skin. So flap means moving up and down. The skin was moving up and down, hanging from the side of his neck to his body. As the wound healed around the neck, his jaw became gripped in a mass of fibrous tissue. The only way this little boy could open his mouth was to raise his head. When I stopped by to see him after the race, he said, we won, and he was laughing. Yes, let me explain. So here we can understand that he met with the severe burns and severe what do you call accident because of this lantern has created much damage for the body of this blind boy, and he lost both the eyes. That is what we have seen. And but during this trolley race, so which Christian Bernard said here, so during this trolley race his face was like a horror. So it was like a horror. Why means his skin hanging from the side of his neck. So his skin was hanging from the side of his neck. And but what happened is, no, this boy did not bother about that. So he was not caring about this skin hanging. He was not caring about the pain he was getting, but he was enjoying. So he was not able to move his jaw. This is one more thing. He was not able to move his jaw. So he could open his mouth only by raising his head. So only by raising his head up, he could open his mouth. So this was the condition of the mechanic, the blind boy, at the time of Grand Prix, the trolley race. Next, when Dr. Christian Bernard stopped to see him after the race, he said, so we can see that after the trolley race, Christian Bernard stopped and to see this mechanic. And so Christian Bernard with the Christian Bernard, this boy was saying that yes, we won the race. He was shouting like that very happily, and he was so happy and he was so laughing. So in spite of the skin hanging from the side of his neck, in spite of his blindness, so he was very, very happy after the trolley race, and he was feeling successful in this trolley race. So this feeling of the mechanic was what you call has comforted and has given much strength to Dr. Christian Bernard, has taught him a lesson. And then let us go to the next paragraph. Next paragraph is about the trolley's driver. About the driver. The trolley's driver I know better. A few years earlier, I had a successfully closed a hole in his heart. He had returned to the hospital because he had a malignant tumor of the bone. So what happened is, here the Christian Bernard was saying that, I know the trolley's driver much better because he came once and the parents came by bringing him once to his hospital only because he had a hole in his heart, and that hole was closed and it was cured. But unfortunately what happened is, now they came once again to this hospital because he had a malignant tumor. Malignant means very infectious, very dangerous tumor of the bone. In the bones he had a tumor. So because of that they came, and look at that. A few days before the race, his shoulder and arm were amputated. So a few days before, his shoulder and arm were amputated. Amputated means cut off. Cut off because his bones had the infection. There was little hope of recovering. So even there is no hope also. There is very less hope of recovering from this particular condition. After the Grand Prix, he proudly informed me that the race was a success. This boy also, the driver or the handicapped boy also, said to Dr. Christian Bernard that the trolley race was a successful event. And the only problem was that the trolley's wheels were not properly oiled. But he was a good driver and he had full confidence in the mechanic. So we can understand here that he even said, it seems the boy even said that the trolley's wheels were not properly oiled, and so because of that we could not go very faster. And now the writer was saying that he was a good driver and he had a full confidence in the mechanic. So he believed the mechanic who was pushing from behind, who was throwing from behind. So with this we can understand by these two children's description that the true friendship is observed here in this incident. True friendship. See, the friendship must be like this, helping each other. And friendship is supporting the friend with what you have. And friendship is that providing strength in the times of weakness of your friend. So providing strength in your friend's weaknesses, during the time of your friend's weaknesses. So this is what is the friendship. So we can find here the true friendship of this mechanic, the blind boy, and the driver, who was the handicapped boy. So their roles were what you call as suitable. So they have taken the correct roles, because if the blind boy becomes the driver, so the trolley cannot go in a proper direction. And if the handicapped boy tries to push it from behind, it cannot happen. The trolley goes slowly. And so their roles were appropriate and suitable. So this is what we can find in the ninth paragraph. Next, let us go to the 10th one. Suddenly, I realized that these two children had given me a profound lesson in getting on with the business of living. Because the business of living is joy in the real sense of the word, not just something for pleasure, amusement, recreation. The business of living is a celebration of being alive. Celebration of being alive. Yes, listen to me. So here in this 10th paragraph, the writer Christian Bernard learned a lesson, it seems, from these two children. So what is the lesson? The lesson is that the true children taught Christian Bernard how to live in spite of suffering, in spite of the illnesses, in spite of the problems. So how to live courageously, how to be brave, and how to make life happy in spite of suffering. So both of them taught Christian Bernard a lesson. And he learned, that the word the word life is nothing but being joyful. So he learned that, and he was saying that these two children taught him the lesson that don't live just for pleasure, or just for time pass, or just for without having any purpose. So don't live just for passing the time without any aim. Don't live just for recreation, pleasure, amusement, and without any purpose. No, don't live for all these types of things, but live by working hard, even in your disabilities, even in your sufferings. And what happens if you work hard even in your sufferings? You will finally find the joy of life, joy of living. For example, in your first year, you had the lesson about Arunima Sinha. Yes, like Arunima Sinha, you need to be brave, and in spite of your disabilities and sufferings, you need to find joy, and you need to work hard very much. And then finally what you do is that you will become successful if you work hard, and then there will be joy for you. So this is what we can find from these two boys. And finally The purpose of living or the business of living is nothing but it is the celebration of being alive. It is to celebrate that you are alive. So this is the purpose of life. This is the purpose of living. So this is what you can find in this particular paragraph. Next, last paragraph. Look at the last paragraph. I had been looking at suffering from the wrong end. You don't become a better person because you are suffering, but you become a better person because you have experienced suffering. We cannot appreciate light if we haven't known darkness, nor can we appreciate warmth if we have never suffered cold. These children showed me that it is not what you have lost that is important. What is most important is what you have left. Yes, listen to me. So Dr. Bernard realized the truth that, during suffering you may feel bitter, you may not like suffering, but after experiencing suffering, you will definitely become a better person. This is what is said by Dr. Christian Barnard. Now you can see that what his father said previously is the same of what Christian Barnard is saying now. Christian Barnard is saying that, after experiencing suffering, you will be a better person, definitely. So now he agreed with his father's view after looking at those two children. Yes, two examples were given in this particular paragraph. That is, light is appreciated if you know the darkness, and warmth is appreciated if you know cold. So if you know cold and if you know darkness, you will appreciate the warmth and you will appreciate the light. So for example, the importance of light and warmth you will know when you have experienced cold and darkness. How much if you go to the deep cold, the cold areas, then you will you will like to go for small warmth. And if you are being there in the much darkness, you will search for a little light. So the importance of light and warmth you will come to know only after experiencing this cold and darkness. So this is what he says here. And here, why he has used light and darkness, why he has used warmth and coldness example is that the importance of life is known after suffering. After experiencing suffering, everybody comes to know the importance of life. As after experiencing darkness, everybody likes to be in light. So whatever you have lost is not important, but what you have and how you are using them are very important. So what you have lost is not important, but what you have left with and how you are using them are very important. So this is what is said by the writer from this particular lesson. So let me explain what Christian Barnard says out of this particular context of two children. So what he says is that we must not worry about what we don't have, and we must not bother about what we don't have, but start making use of what you have and become successful and make your life happy. Make your life happy and become successful with what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have, whatever it may be it your family members, be it the things which you have, be it the facilities which you have. Don't worry about what you don't have, but start making use of what you have and become successful and make your life, lead your life happy. And we must not complain that you don't have this and that. And some people, they say that I don't have this, I don't have that. No, we must not complain, but we must make use of what we have. Definitely we will have some things, we will have some strengths, and we must not worry about our weaknesses and what we don't have. So make use of what you have and be satisfied and be happy. This is what Christian Bernard says. Don't be negative, don't be pessimistic, but be optimistic. Be positive. Don't take everything negatively, saying that I don't have this, I don't have that, and so I am not being successful. No, I am not being joyful. There is no success for me, there is no joy for me. We must not complain, but we must be positive. You must love yourself. You must love yourself and be happy with what you have. Don't compare with others. Don't compare with others. If you compare with others, what happens is you will observe that you are lacking some things, and you will observe that there is something missing in your life. Don't compare yourself with others, but be satisfied with what you have, and be happy with what you have, and start making use of the things and the strengths which you have. This is what is said by Dr. Christian Bernard in this particular lesson in celebration of being alive. So with this, we'll close and end this particular lesson. So everybody is asked to learn a lesson from this particular essay, that is, don't complain about what you don't have, but be satisfied with what you have, and try to see that you will become successful by working hard with whatever you have. So whenever you are going through the sufferings and problems, so think that and note that there will be better life for you in the future. So have a hope and have a positive attitude towards life. So here in this particular essay, there is nothing but the only about suffering, the view of Dr. Christian Bernard about suffering. That is what we have seen. And then what is the view of his father we have seen, and the Christian Bernard explaining about by giving the examples of suffering, how the children are suffering in the hospitals, and how many are dying, and how many are being with the wounds, and how many are there in the hospitals. So he has given the list, but his view of suffering got changed when he observed two children, so the mechanic and the driver. So one is blind and one is the handicapped. After observing both of them and their happiness and their the joyful nature in spite of their suffering, so after looking at both of them, so finally here Christian Bernard decided and learned a lesson from both of their lives, that whatever we don't have, we must not worry about whatever we don't have, but we must make use of what we have, and that is what is important. What we have, what we are left with, that is what is important. And so he gives a suggestion that take suffering as in a positive way, because after suffering you will have a better future. You will learn lessons from that, and then you will be happy, you will be successful after suffering. This is what he says. And he also gives a suggestion that be positive, but don't be negative. So this is what is said by Dr. Christian Bernard in this particular essay. So remember the explanation of the essay. So remember the explanation, so that whenever you study questions and annotations from this particular lesson, so that you will understand and you just apply this explanation in your reading, and then it will be very easy for you to write the annotations and questions in your exams well. So this is what is about in celebration of being alive. Thank you.